Cool. So the whole point of what we're doing is just the idea that we become disciples who train other disciples. The Apostle Paul, when he was preaching and starting churches, obviously he couldn't be everywhere at once, and so one of his favorite churches was the church at Ephesus. He got to spend about 3 years ministering to the people there. But then he had to go on and move on, and so he left Timothy, a young preacher, in charge of the church in Ephesus. And there was some leadership that was kind of taking the church some different ways it shouldn't be going. And Paul left this young guy in charge and said, hey, you need to straighten those guys out, which to me is a pretty wild thing. To be that young, to be that in charge, says a lot for what Paul thought of Timothy, but it also, I think, puts him in a hard position, being a young man and trying to lead people who could easily be his parents or his grandparents. But that's the situation he was put in. And Timothy struggled there. And so Paul went back to Ephesus, he visited there again, and Paul got arrested again. Because when he went and preached in towns, he started either a revival or a riot, or sometimes both. So a lot of times, a lot of people would come to Christ, and that would make the Jewish people angry, and so they would start a riot and try and throw him in prison, kill him, or kick him out of town. And so that's kind of what happened. Paul was taken to Rome, and so when Paul was in Rome in prison, he wrote a couple letters to Timothy. So in our New Testament, there's 2 books, 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, where Paul is writing to Timothy and saying, okay, you're in charge of the church, here's the things you need to do. And that is where we get our verse, kind of the theme of what we're trying to accomplish. And the things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable men will also be qualified to teach others. And so, again, I love the verse that it goes from Paul to Timothy to reliable men to others. So it's the whole theme of Christianity is someone told you about Christ. Someone told you about Jesus. And at some point you say, you know what, I'm in. But that chain doesn't stop with you. We now have responsibility to teach other people about that. And so, just a couple questions that go along with that, entrust to reliable men. If Timothy is looking through the church and trying to find reliable men who will be qualified to teach others, what was he looking for? Would we have been one of the people that he would have chosen to continue that? Or what do I need to become to be the guy that would be chosen for that? And so that's, I think, just a couple of good questions. Paul goes on and gives 3 illustrations in there of the kind of people that he's looking for, or that Timothy should be looking for. The first illustration, no one serving as a soldier gets entangled in civilian affairs, but rather tries to please his commanding officer. When you become a soldier, that's your life, from everything that I've been told. Your life kind of revolves around the dude that's in charge of you. And he can make your life miserable, or he can make it worth not living at all. And kind of his choice, right? And so your goal is to try and get him not to yell at you all the time. You want to do the task that's there, and so the stuff that's outside of that world becomes a lot less important. And so for us as Christians, there's a lot of stuff happening in this world. The closer I think that we get to the end times, I'm looking so forward to Ashley's sermon series on Revelation. The closer that we get to the end times, I think that there's not much that has to happen for that time to hit us. It's like, okay, what are we focused on? Are we focused on our career? Are we focused on gathering wealth or gathering possessions? Are we focused on making a name for ourselves, success, or whatever it is? Or are we focused on Christ? Are we focused on building up God's kingdom? And that's the illustration, the first one we use. And so one of the last command that Jesus gave, make disciples of all nations. We need to be training up people. Which people? People at work, people at home, people in our church, people in our community. We need to have eyes and looking out for guys that we can help train up to become disciples. I don't know what the stats are at the church. I would say 30 to 40% of people are in a group. That means 60 to 70% of people are not in a group. And about half of those are guys. There's a huge number of people just in the church that need to be taught how to be a disciple of Christ. And so the harvest is plentiful. So the first illustration he gives is a soldier. The second he gives is an athlete. He says, again, talking to Timothy about the guys he's trying to recruit and to lead. Anyone who competes as an athlete does not receive the victor's crown except by competing according to the rules. God's kingdom has different rules than the world's kingdom does. God's kingdom, God says crazy things like those people that are against you at your workplace, they're against you trying to do things for God. Those are the people you need to love. When you have your finances, God says give to him first, and the world says give to yourself first. Servant leadership, it's amazing to me how many times people get put into a position of leadership where they start thinking, okay, now I'm all that, and people should listen to me. They should do what I say, and I'm in charge, and I'm going to show you that I'm in charge. And God's system of leadership says I need to be a servant leader. I need to, if I am in charge of people, which is not a bad thing at all, it's exactly what he's telling Timothy to do. But if I'm in charge of people, I need to do what I can to build them up, to help them succeed. When I help them succeed, the people on my team succeed, guess what? Most of the time, I'm going to as well. Don't brag on yourself, which is ironic then that I would be filming this. There's plenty of people that are out there just trying to make a name for themselves and talk about how great they are. We live in a society that seems to be focused on that. And God says, let someone else praise you. Let someone else tell you how good you are. You don't need to be telling everyone else. So those are the types of rules that God has set up. And those are the types of rules that we need to follow. It's not living by the world's standard. We live by God's standard. The third illustration that Paul gives to Timothy is the hardworking farmer should be the first to receive a share of the crops. The hardworking farmer, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in a little rural town in Kansas. Had my dad's brother and his whole family lived on a farm, worked on a farm. My grandfather was a custom cutter. And so what that meant is during the harvest season, he would start down south. He would take a couple of combines down south where the harvest got there the first. He would cut the fields because a lot of times farmers grow enough that they can't harvest it all themselves. So he would go down there and cut fields and just follow and head north throughout the harvest season. So I don't know a lot about farming, but I've been exposed to enough to know that, man, you get up at dark 30, and that's when your day starts. And you take care of the animals, you take care of the crops, because your livelihood is based on those things. And it may be a holiday, and it doesn't matter. You got to get out and you got to do those things. And at dark, talking to a guy recently, because he grew up on a milking farm, so they had to milk the cows at 4 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock at night. So twice a day, you got to go out and do those things. And it's a hard life. I think there's probably a reason people don't live to be real long in the past with that type of a lifestyle. But it's amazing the things that we will do to wear ourselves out, to leave it all on the floor for athletics or for our jobs or whatever it is. That's the type of attitude Paul's saying, hey, we should have that attitude about God's kingdom. We should have that type of attitude where we're like, yeah, I'm going to wear myself out for God and building up his kingdom. Not just the physical part, but also the emotional part that comes with it. If you start doing things for God and living out for him, there's an emotional piece that comes with it. Jesus tells, for the farmer, one of the worst things that can happen is a nasty storm to come right during the harvest time and just wipe out the crops. So all this stuff that you've been working for the entire year can be gone. It can just be wiped out. And all your labor's gone, all your income is gone, right? Same thing happens when you try to win people to Christ and help them to grow in their faith. Jesus tells a very interesting story, the parable of the soils. And he talks about when you start trying to make disciples, there's 4 different reactions to it. The first is the evil one will come and snatch the word out. So you share with people, you share God's word with them, and before it really even gets to them, Satan comes and takes it away. There's a second group of people, they go, wow, yeah, this Christianity is a really cool thing. I like this. But when troubles come, they fall away. They're like, well, if God's not even going to protect me from this, then why would I want to be a part of that? And there's another group that probably in our society is probably the biggest, the worries of life and deceitfulness of wealth. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and we have a lot of things that distract us from God. And if we start feeling bad about ourselves, instead of seeing that as a sign that we should turn to God, we'll turn to whatever it is to entertain ourselves. And so Jesus tells a parable about when we try to make disciples of people, here's 3 different groups of people that are going to leave. The 4th then is the good soil, the ones that stay and they produce and they persevere. But when you start trying to make disciples of other people, expect not just the physical labor, but also expect the emotional. And it's tough. It's tough when you have invested a lot of your life into someone and you see the change that happens, and then you see them go away. And it's hard, and you can question God and you can question yourself. But just because the crop fails doesn't mean the farmer has to stop working, right? So Paul's instructions to Timothy, hey, find reliable men, people that will do these things, and they'll be able to teach other people that can teach other people. And that's what we're called to do. That's what we're going to focus on this year. My goal is that by the end of this year, everyone in here will be able to train someone else to be a disciple. So that's the goal. So I'll tell you about that just a little bit more. But right now, we've got small group questions.